Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Flame Entertainment and Sports. It's your boy Rob here. Hope everyone's doing good out there. Make sure to keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok at the flame_ES. This episode is going to be a strictly Dancing with the Stars only episode, being that we had such an extra special episode, on Tuesday night, 20th birthday celebration episode of Dancing with the Stars. Officially, they've been on the air for 20 years, and as a lifelong fan of the show, it was so cool to see, obviously all the great couples we have this season, being that it's one of the most competitive seasons in the history of the show, but also seeing the return of Tom Bergeron, who, returned to the ballroom floor after several years. He was obviously the original host of this show for so many years. Then he hadn't been there, and I want to say since 2019, because the first season without him was the COVID season. So, it had been like 6 years basically since Tom had been in that ballroom. So seeing Tom back was just amazing. And then seeing all the different pros from the past, the original six pros that started off this show all the way back to 20 years ago on season one, seeing them start off the night with a in the beginning of that opening performance, and then seeing all the celebrities who have been on this show over the years, overall it's just like such an amazing celebration. And I feel like everyone, part of Dancing with the Stars, they did an amazing job of honoring the past and the present of Dancing with the Stars. I also love, before I get into, each couple and how they did tonight, or how they did on Tuesday night, I also love like the little behind the scenes, video we got from the judges. Actually, I don't think they had ever really, shown such a behind the scenes thing like that in terms of the judges. And Derek explains how, immediately after the couples perform and while they're walking up to Julianne in the skybox, the judges already have to put in their scores. It kind of gives you a different perspective. So at the end of the day, like, they literally got to put these scores in like at the moment without much time of really thinking. And I think that's super cool that they showed all these behind the scenes, footage, right, of all these judges. Like I said, they also did a great job of honoring, those who have passed away, from Dancing with the Stars. They went down a list of, many celebrities, most recently being Anne Heche, who was on, the COVID season of the show. And then they ended with Len Goodman, a picture of him on the big screen there. And obviously that was the most emotional moment, at least for me there. And I have to shout out, Riley and Ezra. They did a beautiful job of dancing during that, in memoriam tribute to all those who have passed away, like I said, from Dancing with the Stars. But yeah, I wanted to start off with all these, shout outs, right, to all these different elements of this 20th birthday celebration episode before I got into, the competition of it all, because I really feel that, everyone should be giving their flowers, right, to all those who were involved any sort of way in putting this amazing celebration together. It was so special to see. And with all that said, it was also another amazing night of dancing competition. Like I said already, this has been arguably the most competitive season in the history of the show. And, obviously this was the episode prior to semifinals. So now going forward, we only have two more episodes left. So it's been competitive from day one, but just imagine now there's less couples. So the competition is getting even tighter. And then not only is it less couples, but what I've really seen this season is multiple couples getting better week in and week out. So that makes it even more of a competitive season. So yeah, with all that said, the night started off with a salsa performed by Elaine and Alan. It was another beautiful dance by this couple. Elaine, I feel like week in and week out, she just dances with so much ease and calmness and confidence. And then Alan does such a great job of, the choreography and putting Elaine in the right, positions for her to succeed. And yeah, I also wrote down it was great timing. I didn't really see any missteps here from Elaine and Alan. And overall, it was just another impressive performance. And I think I say it week in and week out, but this is a couple that has truly, surprised us literally all the way from week one. And now look at them heading over to the semifinals next week. And, they've grown tremendously, and they just continue to improve week in and week out. And at the end of the day, that's, really the goal for all these couples. The end goal is obviously to get that Len Goodman Mirrorball trophy, but at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're progressing and getting better week in and week out to give yourself an opportunity to make it to that finale and have a chance to be the champions of, season 34. And I feel like Elaine and Alan have done a tremendous job of doing that week in and week out. And yeah, with all that said, I gave them a 9. They received 4 nines from the judges, so that Elaine and Alan finished with a 36 out of 40. Next up, we had a foxtrot performed by Robert and Whitney. I forgot to mention this before with Elaine and Alan, But each of these dances on this special episode of the show were inspired from previous dances that we've seen in the history of the show. So I just wanted to point that out. And with Robert and Whitney here, they danced a foxtrot, and it was inspired by Bindi and Derek Huff's, freestyle when they won the competition many years ago. And that dance was honoring Steve Irwin, the father of Bindi and Robert. So the fact now that not only Bindi honored her father with that performance, but now Robert also performed that same performance and honored their father as well, I think was so special. And this was just another dance you could add into um the amazing season that this elite couple has had. Robert and Whitney, they truly continue to blossom on a weekly basis. They continue to pull you in. Not only is it like the heartfelt elements of, most of their performances have been so heartfelt and emotional and raw and vulnerable, but also the dancing aspect of it just continues to grow as well. And you see the connection they have on and off the ballroom floor, and that makes it even better, because at the end of the day, no matter how good they are on the barroom floor, if they don't connect off of it, they're not really gonna, be a legit contender for that mirror ball. But this, this duo, you obviously see the connection. It's kind of like a big sister, little brother type of thing with Whitney and Robert, and it's just beautiful to watch them week in and week out. I wrote down, it was beautiful, special, all heart. They left it all out on the dance floor. And with all that said, I gave them a 10. And, I'm happy to say they received the first perfect score of season 34. So they received a 40 out of 40. Congrats to Robert and Whitney on their first perfect score. And, having the first perfect score of this whole competition, which I've referred to already today multiple times, being like arguably the most competitive season ever. So I think that's an amazing accomplishment. And I wrote down first perfect score of season 34 on Dancing with the Stars 20th birthday party. All right, guys, next up, we had a quick step performed by Andy and Emma. This is, of all the couples left, this is obviously the biggest underdog. Many people had Andy and Emma going home by week 1, week 2, or maybe week 3. But the fact that they've lasted all the way here to, the third to last episode of the season speaks volumes about the joy they've brought into so many homes across America, and the joy and love they have for each other out there on and off the ballroom floor. And yeah, this quick step, what I wrote down in my notes, I put improvement. I feel like it was their best dance they've done, maybe overall, or at least in the last couple of weeks. I think this is the best dance they've done. I also wrote great footwork. I feel like this was the best footwork showcased by this couple this season. Overall, though, at the end of the day, as much, joy and improvement as they've, brought into us, I do got to keep it real with my scores, because at the end of the day, the scores are reflective of the dance and the performance overall. So with that said, I gave Andy and Emma a 6. They received an 8 from Carrie Ann, 3 7s from the rest of the judges, so they finished with a 29 out of 40. All right, guys, next up, we had an Argentine tango that Carrie Ann called the best Argentine tango in the history of Dancing with the Stars, and that was performed by Dylan and Daniela. The perfect example of, progress is Dylan and Daniela, along with Robert and Whitney and Alix and Val as well. These three couples, I said it last week, and I just think these three just continue to get better and better, and they continue to rise to that competition that Whitney and Mark had been showing, for the prior weeks, before these couples really took off. And this dance, it was Dylan's breakthrough moment. I feel like Derek, he described it perfectly. It was Dylan's breakthrough moment. Dylan, how locked in he was into his character during this Argentine tango was just absolutely elite. The movements, everything he does with his arms, his legs, like he always shows these like flashes from the beginning, but now it's the full package is being put fully together. And also we got to shout out Daniela, as always, as I've called her, this season, arguably the greatest, coach, right, in the history of the show. And, these two just continue to grow on a weekly basis. We see how bought in they are, how much they're enjoying dancing together. And we see how much joy and how much Dylan's actually enjoying learning dance from Daniela. And yeah, I described it in my notes as I put, wow, amazing, locked in, their best dance so far. And that speaks volumes, because I've been super high on this couple. So the fact that, I and along with, I think the majority of the audience felt this was their best dance speaks volumes. And it only makes it more competitive and more exciting now with 2 episodes down to go. So with all that said, I gave them a 10, and they received the perfect 40 out of 40. So first we had Robert and Whitney get the first perfect score of the season on this episode, and now we have Dylan and Daniela get the second perfect score of the season. So congratulations to them. Cannot wait to see what they do next week in the semifinals. All right, guys, next up we had a cha-cha performed by Jordan and Ezra. And, this is a couple that I've called them a wild card because I feel like they've had weeks where they look like they could win the whole competition. But then they've also had moments where you're like, oh, they could go home on any given episode. But I'm happy to say I feel like this Cha Cha by Jordan and Ezra, on the 20th birthday celebration episode of the show was a huge improvement in comparison to their past two performances. I feel this was, yeah, arguably their best performance of the whole season, or at least it's at least top two, top three, because I feel it was just great from start to finish. I put completely in sync from start to finish, and I wrote down improvement, and that's really what stood out to me. Like I really felt that they went back to the dancing roots, and I've kind of asked that, talked about this couple the last 2 weeks, saying that I would love to see more dance content from them, and I feel this week we got it, and with them putting that more dance content in it, we see how truly elite this couple could be. And it was a perfect time for them to have such a bounce back performance, being that we're now officially 2 episodes away from the finale. So yeah, shout out to Jordan and Ezra, tremendous improvement. Can't wait to see what they do next week in the semifinals. I gave them a 9. They received 3 9s and a 10 from Derek. So Jordan and Ezra finished with a 37 out of 40. All right, guys, next up, we have my favorite couple of the season, and they performed my favorite dance of that night once again, and that is Alix and Val. They performed an amazing foxtrot. I wrote down amazing as always. The growth continues. The best. Complete joy as always from Alix and Val. And yeah, it's just so impressive to see the growth, right, that Alix and Val have shown from week 1 all the way now to, being in the semifinals next week on Tuesday night. It's just so impressive. And, I might sound like a broken record, being that I've kind of described Dylan, Daniela, and Robert and Whitney the same I've kind of described Alix and Val this season. It's just like these 3 couples specifically just continue to improve and get better week in and week out. They continue to work on little elements that the judges ask them to work on. They take it in stride and they put it into action. And at the end of the day, they make such a great team together. And specifically here with Alix and Val, you just see Alix as well, always so locked in. You see her demeanor and how focused she is, and she's truly living and dancing in the moment with Val out there. And I think you continue to see their connection grow as well as time's gone on. Going back to a couple episodes ago where Alix asked Val to be a little more harsh with her, and they called it vintage Val, and people have gained a lot of respect. Seeing that video package of Alix, right, asking Val to be a little more harsh and strict with her, because it truly showed that she is truly locked in, and their main goal at the end of the day here is to win the Len Goodman Mirrorball Trophy. And I feel like they keep going the right steps forward in order to improve their chances week in and week out of truly being, the champions of season 34. And this was another tremendous step in the right direction. And I feel like week in and week out, their best dance just continues to come and come. If that makes sense. Like, oh, this week it was their best dance, and then they danced next week, and that was their best dance. So I hope I described it right there. I just feel like week in and week out, I continue to love this couple's performances more and more. So it's just so impressive to see what they've been able to do, and it's kind of crazy that we only have 2 episodes left. So I really want to take it in because it's truly, Alix and Val are truly one of my all-time favorite couples here on the history of Dancing with the Stars. And with all that said, I gave them a 10. And they received the 3rd perfect score of the night and the season overall. So Alix and Val finished with a 40 out of 40. Congratulations to them. Last week, they came 1 point shy with a 39 out of 40, and now they officially did it. But at the end of the day, like I've said with this couple, I believe I said it last week. Like at the end of the day, their main goal is to win it all. So even though they got a perfect score, I know they're not satisfied at all, and they're gonna look to improve and do even better next week in the semifinal episode. All right, guys. So our final classic dance of the night was a Argentine tango performed by Whitney and Mark. Of course, this has been a couple I've been super high on from the get-go. Out of the gates in week 1, I gave them a perfect score. I was absolutely blown away. But then surprisingly, within the last 3 weeks, I haven't been as high as I once was on them, but I am happy to say that after watching them perform this Argentine tango, I'm happy to say that they're officially back in that elite tier of the competition, and they definitely have a chance of winning that Len Goodman Mirrorball Trophy a couple weeks from now. I wrote down as well sexy, beast mode. Like I said already, back to elite tier. I put Whitney as beautiful as always. She's always. It's just amazing watching her out there. I don't know how you can't, smile watching Whitney out there, seeing how locked in she is on a weekly basis, and at the same time, I don't know how you can appreciate the greatness of Mark Ballas, right, on a weekly basis. Like he said on the episode, he's been part of this show for 18 years now, and it's just unbelievable to see that we get to see this legend continuing to dance and show his greatness and being such a great coach and partner, right? all the celebrities he's had over the years. The fact that we continue to see that this season, we just got to really take it in as, lifelong Dancing with the Stars fans, because obviously Mark Ballas is one of the all-time greats in the history of this show. So yeah, it was just another amazing performance and a much needed bounce back performance, at least in my opinion. I feel like this performance finally brings them back and raises the confidence level once again with this couple going forward. So I'm super excited now to see what they have planned for, the semifinals next week. With all that said, I gave them a 10, and they received the fourth perfect score of the night and the season overall. So Whitney and Mark finished with a 40 out of 40. Congratulations to them. That's officially, four perfect scores, and we still have 2 episodes to go. So I mean, it speaks volumes, and it adds to my point of this being like arguably the most competitive season in the history of the show. All right, guys. So next up, we had a relay round, and the show did something they've never done in the history of the show with this relay round. I absolutely loved it. So basically, each couple, right, did not dance together. But what happened here for the first time in the history of the show, each celebrity was paired up with a former mirror ball champion. And the first round of relay dances was between Jordan and Ezra. Versus Elaine and Alan. But being that, like I said, these celebrities are dancing with former celebrity mirrorball champs, we had Jordan dance with Apollo, Anton Ono, so 2, Olympic gold medalists right there. And then we had Elaine dance with Rashad Jennings, former NFL running back. So first off, before I get into like the scores and how everyone danced and stuff, I just feel this was such an amazing concept and idea by the show. And this is definitely my favorite one of the season, having to do with these like, different rounds and stuff, as the competition goes further along, And yeah, the fact that they came up with this on such a special occasion, their 20th anniversary or 20th birthday episode, I think was like literally God's timing. And I really hope that going forward, they add this in permanently. Next season, I hope we see it in season 35, that we have this relay dance round once again with former Mirrorball champs returning to the ballroom floor, because I think it was such a cool idea. And I think it was absolute, grand slam, home run out of the park, whatever you want to call it. So with all that said, Jordan, like I said, danced with Apollo, and then we had Elaine dance with Rashad, and basically how it was set up. So one couple had danced for the first 45 seconds of a given song, and then the other couple came in for that final 45 seconds, and then the judges just had to pick, which couple they felt did a better job. So in this case, for this round, we had a quick step, and Jordan and Apollo. So how I did it, I didn't grade them how the judges graded them. I graded them with a number, like with a score. But the judges, just had to pick one or the other without scoring. So I gave Jordan and Apollo an 8, but I also gave Elaine and Rashad an 8. And my explanations is this. So for Jordan and Apollo, I felt like they started off amazing, and then for Elaine or Rashad, I feel like they ended amazing. So that's why I was like 50-50 with this one. So I didn't necessarily pick an overall winner. But with that said, the judges picked Jordan and Apollo to win this relay dance round. And by the way, for each couple that wins, it's they get 2 bonus points added to their overall total score of the night. So that's kind of the added element to this whole relay dance type of thing. And with that said, our next relay dance competition was a Viennese waltz. It was Andy and Emma versus Dylan and Daniela. Andy performed with Caitlin Bristow, the former Bachelorette and Mirrorball champion, one of my all-time favorites. So shout out to Caitlin. And then we had Dylan perform with Rumor Willis, another, Mirrorball champion and actress, the daughter of Bruce Willis and Demi Moore. This was an amazing round. First off with Dylan and Rumor, I wrote down amazing. I gave them a perfect 10 out of 10 because I just feel like they literally look like 2 professional dancers out there. So I was so damn impressed by Dylan and Rumor, and I believe they only had like 2 or 3 days of rehearsal. So the fact that they look like they've been dancing for years speaks volumes to how much progress, Dylan's, truly shown out there, and how much help Daniela's given him. But also speaks to the volumes of how great a dancer Rumor is, and she truly didn't lose a step. And then as for Andy and Caitlin, it was such an entertaining performance overall. As always, Andy bringing so much joy into the ballroom floor. And then Caitlin, I feel like she was a perfect former Mirrorball champ, to pair up with Andy, because they're both so funny and they're both like, 2 big characters. They're always joking around. So I feel like they're a perfect pairing. They brought so much entertainment. And with that said, I gave Andy his highest score of the whole season, as I gave him and Caitlin a score of 8. So with that said, Dylan and Rumor did win this Viennese waltz edition of the relay round. But once again, shout out to Caitlin Bristow, like I said already, one of my all-time favorites. I got to meet her. The tour she was part of, it was the one right after COVID actually. And that was super cool to get to meet her there for a couple minutes. And I follow her a lot, and she was amazing on the show. I loved her on The Bachelorette as well, and she has a great podcast as well. So shout out to Caitlin Bristol. But yeah, this was such a fun round with Dylan and Rumor and Andy and Caitlin. And then next up for our final round of the night, I forgot to mention this. Whitney and Mark did not have to participate, being that they had the highest scores going into this episode. So with that said, the final relay round of the night was the most competitive by far. And it was a jive performed by Robert and Whitney, and Alix and Val. Robert performed with Sochi Gomez, who won with Val a couple years ago. And then we had Alix perform with Joey, who won last season with Jenna Johnson. So yeah, overall, I mean, both of these couples were absolutely elite. I describe both couples the same way: star-powered and joyous. And yeah, I gave them both a 10. So this one to me, for the judges, I can't imagine how hard it was, because Robert and Sochi, by the way, they're so similar in terms of their personality, always smiling, full of joy. And then you have Alix and Joey. They're so locked in, they're so competitive, and they're just looking to win. So it's like a battle of like two amazing pairings overall. But that said, the judges named Robert and Sochi the winner of the round. But overall, I mean, it was just so fun. And this was, like I said, by far the best overall round in terms of competition. Once again, shout out to Robert and Sochi on a great job, and a great job to Alix and Joey as well. It was so cool seeing, Joey return to the ballroom floor. Him in general are my favorite, pairing last season, and now he's dancing with Alix and Val, who are my favorite pairing this season. So I thought that was really cool, actually. All right, guys. So as always, the final segment, right, of this Dancing with the Stars recap is the elimination. And as always, I stayed on here, during the final commercial break. I write down the couple I'm feeling in my gut that I think is going to go home. In this case, I was feeling Jordan and Ezra, actually, for some reason. But ultimately, Andy and Emma ended up being eliminated on this episode. And the way I described this elimination, I put one of the all-time great underdog stories in the history of Dancing with the Stars. I think maybe the greatest underdog story ever, like arguably the greatest, because the fact that they made it so far and they actually showed progression week in and week out, and they brought so much joy and built, the fandies, right? They literally built their own fan base because of how much joy they brought into the ballroom floor on a weekly basis. So congratulations to them on a hell of a run, an unexpected run that no one honestly saw coming. So super impressive. Couldn't be more happier for, Emma. She's amazing. And I've talked about her around here, meeting her a couple of years ago. And she was just like one of the nicest people I've ever met. And then you see the joy, right, that she has doing this show on a weekly basis. And then Andy as well. Shout out to him on, bringing us all so much joy and laughter and smiles, right, throughout his journey this season on the show. But yeah, I feel like it was an elimination that, it is bittersweet, because people love seeing this couple because they bring so much joy. But at the same time, it's also like a heartfelt and happy elimination, if that makes sense, because they got so much further than any of us expected them to go. So yeah, once again, shout out and congratulations to Andy and Emma on a tremendous journey this season. But yeah, guys, gonna wrap up my thoughts on the 20th birthday episode of of Dancing with the Stars. Once again, happy birthday to Dancing with the Stars, one of my favorite shows of all time. It's brought so much, great memories and joy into my life over the years. And, I can't wait for the rest of the episodes and moments to come, with this amazing show. And another thing I hadn't mentioned, but they broke another voting record during this episode. Just incredible. Last year, they started breaking records. This season, it feels like on a weekly basis, basically, the voting records keep on getting smashed as well. And as a lifelong fan of the show, I couldn't be happier, for everyone part of Dancing with the Stars, because they truly deserve all this attention they're getting, because, everyone part of that show just does an incredible job. And, on a weekly basis, a seasonal basis, yearly basis, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, just another amazing episode and extra special, heartfelt, edition of the show, being that it was a 20th birthday celebration. So once again, shout out to Dancing with the Stars. If you're watching on YouTube and you guys want to give me your thoughts on this episode or anything you're looking forward to for these final 2 episodes of season 34, make sure to comment down here below. You could also reach out to us via Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_ES if you want to share your thoughts on anything Dancing with the Stars related. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this Dancing with the Stars segment. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this Dancing with the Stars 20th birthday episode recap. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, it was an honor and a blessing to be able to, give my thoughts on this show and a show that means so much to me and on such a special occasion for everyone part of this franchise in the past and the current time, and for those who are yet to be part of this Dancing with the Stars family, So yeah, guys, it's just amazing as always, and I always have a great time talking about this show. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on everything once again. If you're watching on YouTube, drop your comments below. If you want to share your thoughts on anything related to this show or anything you're looking forward to. And you could also share your thoughts with us on Instagram and TikTok at @theflame_ES. Make sure to follow us on there as well. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We greatly appreciate it. But yeah, guys, with all that said, once again, happy birthday to Dancing with the Stars. Until next time, everyone, take care.